Great. Thank you. And welcome, everybody, to the September 15th, 2016 Sherborn Board of Selectmen meeting, our second meeting this week. Diane or David, would you please read through the agenda?
Sure. First, we'll vote to approve or amend the agenda, and we have one amendment that's to amend the agenda to add approval of payroll warrants number 2 and number 6. Then add topics not reasonably anticipated by the chair 48 hours in advance, and I'm not aware of any of those items. Then special fall town meeting consideration of warrant signing, and discussion of Board of Health open meeting law complaint, and then proposed 40B project multi-unit development on Sewellbrook Lane, and then adjourn. And then at 7 o'clock, public training session regarding 40B with Beals and Thomas, the Mass Housing sponsored consultant, and the planning board.
Okay. All right, so do we have an amendment to the agenda?
Well, a question. There's no public comment on here, I believe.
We had public comment on Tuesday, so we weren't going to do public comment today. We set up a special agenda, if you remember, Paul, so we could have the meeting tonight.
Okay.
Other comments, questions? I was going to say I don't think we're going to adjourn. I think if more than 3 of us are going to stay for the training, we should stay in session until the training's over. Anything else? We had that one amendment of approval of payroll warrants. So with that, can we get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second. Okay, all in favor? Great, thanks. Okay, first issue is this special town meeting, full town meeting warrant. We scheduled the town meeting on the basis of a representation that we were going to have a citizens petition, which we do. There's a draft warrant that since then has accumulated a number of other items, and we're going to walk through these and decide what stays on the final warrant. The first one is a request to raise and appropriate, and we're not going to endorse any of these tonight. It's simply a matter of deciding what's included in the warrant. Paying unpaid bills, it's a total of $5,679.34. I would suggest this stays on. This is pretty much a housekeeping item typically.
I move that it stay on.
All right. Second. Okay, all in favor of keeping that one on? Great, thank you. The next one is I guess this is a capital article, David, for facility upgrades, and you're recommending, I believe, that this come off the warrant for this meeting and go back on for the spring?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
This is because free cash won't be certified by...
Primarily, there's no funding source.
There's no funding source this fall? Okay, all right. And what are we going to do about fixing these things, though, that are, some of which are pretty urgent in terms of needs and have been postponed already? Do we have other ways to get these projects started or not?
No, not these. 2 of them can wait until the spring. The only one that was benefit of, if we had the funds, was to do the police department HVAC at the same time we do the roof. So your options are waiting to do the roof in the spring once the HVAC money might get approved, or you go ahead and do the roof and then next spring add in money to redo the portion that the HVAC units are mounted on, which is a flat membrane area, and it would be probably a few thousand to do.
But in the meantime,
that
the
portion.
roof wouldn't continue to leak all winter?
If we did the roof now,
Yeah,
right?
okay, good. All right, so what do we do with this article? Are we going to take this off?
There's a motion to take it off from
Okay.
Selectman Yuan. I second it.
All right. Further discussion? Okay, all in favor of taking it off? Great, okay. The next is a traffic safety zone. I understand, that was on behalf of Chief Thompson, I understand he's requested to have this removed?
Yes, the Traffic Safety Committee met last night, and they're requesting that the selectmen take it off to give them time to come up with a process and policy that they could make as a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen on how to implement this and wield it once it gets approved.
Okay. Chief, did you want to add anything, or are you good with that? No? Okay.
I got him turning the AC on.
Susan Tyler wanted to make a comment on behalf of traffic safety. I actually felt, I think it's all their lead
Okay.
on removing it to the warrant.
Do you want to hear our reasoning, or?
I think if it's going to go back in the spring,
It's
that's
going-
probably
yeah,
fine.
It will definitely come up again in the spring. We need more time for studying and putting in parameters and seeing how to do it and setting it up so it's done consistently throughout the town.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion to remove that one?
Second.
Okay,
Second?
all in favor? Okay. The fire chief, what are we doing with this one, David?
There was a language update. It doesn't change the intent of it, but that one would still move forward.
Okay, so this is to allow the fire chief to require third-party reviews of fire and sprinkler plans for reviews to be paid by the applicant. This follows from the discussion we had with the acting chief concerning fees, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, do we have a motion on this one?
Well, before you take the motion, this isn't worded the way
It's not,
I would have worded it if I were town council.
but you should make the edits to the version that I give you for the warrant after...
David didn't change the language on this one, Paul. He has an updated warrant.
You should change the language on the warrant, not necessarily on the checklist.
I'm working off of this.
The warrant that I'm going to give you after you take these votes.
All right, but this doesn't
Okay.
have the final language on it for some reason.
Right.
Okay.
That was the other night. This is the version that was distributed the other night. The language change came in today.
Okay.
All right, so we have a motion to keep this on with the language change?
Yes.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second?
All in favor? Great, thank you. All right, this is an article we proposed, which was to change how the Land Acquisition Committee is populated. So again, this is just a vote to keep it on the agenda, so do we have a motion to do that? I mean, on the warrant?
Before you take the motion, I mean, why can't we do this at the annual town meeting? Why do we have to
Yeah, I have the same
Make-
question.
make this into a special, it was a special town meeting essentially for one purpose, and as we start to, and I understand the urgency of paying unpaid bills, we should pay our unpaid bills. But as we focus things more, this is a long article, it might take as much discussion as everything else on the warrant. Why have that here and not at the annual town meeting?
Make that motion. Please.
All right,
Take it
so-
off.
Yeah, because I don't want people not to come because they think it's going to kill their evening. So I move to postpone this to the annual town meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor of that? Great, okay. That's shortening things considerably, good. The next one is the citizens petition, so this one stays on. That's a 3 to 5 change in the Board of Health. The following one is a citizens petition, which has,
You need a motion, dude?
yeah, let's do, I guess it's a given, but yeah.
No warrant?
Okay, do we have a second on that?
Second.
Okay, all in favor of doing what we have to do by statute? Great.
We like following this
Yeah,
thing.
and then the next one is another, that's a qualified petition, David?
Yes.
Okay, so again, do we have a motion for that?
So move.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Great. Yeah, that's the one of the qualifications to serve on the Board of Health.
Establishing minimum credentials for serving members of the Sherborn Board of Health.
It doesn't state their credentials, it just says establishing minimum credentials. The next one is an article about, now how did this get in there under us, David?
Early on, we had put in a bunch of articles that were originally looked at for the annual
Okay,
town
so
meeting.
this is one we can
And then
pull
we
off.
dropped some off, but we never officially took those off. We
Right.
thought that somebody might pick them up as, to sponsor them,
Yeah.
but they haven't.
All right, I'll take that off. I mean, I'll move to take that off. This is the appointed board.
Oh, okay.
I'll second it. If you recall, when it first came up, I had a concern about putting that on the warrant without a
Yeah.
sponsor, without either a government study committee or a citizen petition or request from the Board of Health or something.
Right.
It's got,
All right.
it's an orphan.
Good, we have a motion and a second. Do we vote to approve this?
We're voting to take it off.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yes.
I meant the motion. Okay, all in favor? Great. And the Board of Health Director position one, this is another one again where it was a placeholder, David?
Yes.
Okay.
Same
all right. So do we have a motion
circumstances.
to remove this one?
So moved. Second?
Okay, all in favor? All right, great. And those might come back at a later time, but not for this. Okay, so it looks like we're going to have a 1, 2, 3, 4 article special town meeting.
So let's go through this warrant.
What is that warrant?
This is the updated fire language and removal of the capital items and that kind of thing. So
Well,
this,
does it look like what we just approved?
without those items in it, and the language change to the fire department article.
So in other words, you want us to look at the language change to the fire department article because that's the difference between what we just looked at in this.
Yes.
Which is the fire department?
Article 2.
Article 2.
Well, again, if I were Sherborn's town council, I would write this in a little different fashion. I would say that the governor just signed a piece of legislation called the Municipal Modernization Act. And as part of that act, they expanded the scope of a statute known as 53G, it's Chapter 44 of 53G, to go beyond its current scope, which is the Board of Appeals and the Conservation Commission and the Planning Board, to also include other town officials, boards, and committees. And so I would have written this to expand and to amend the town's prior votes on 53G to now include the authority of the fire chief to do this. So I would have worded this differently. There's no reference to the new statutory authority for this.
So that could be added before town meeting then, if it's needed,
Yeah, maybe in the...
as a motion or something. Yep, okay, good. An advisory motion or some other motion. Great, so anybody have any, I guess we want to vote to have you produce the warrant as shown here, David, and then have us sign it. You guys
Yes.
sign it tonight?
Yeah,
Okay,
I can do that.
all right, great, good. So we have a motion to approve this as the warrant in that order?
So moved.
Okay. All right, all in favor? Okay, good, thanks. Now we're on to the next item here, since we've got a very tight schedule tonight, which is discussion of Board of Health open meeting law complaints. This was put on the agenda for a couple of reasons. One is because we've gotten a lot of communications with concern about a recent Board of Health meeting. A lot of requests that the Board of Selectmen do something to take some kind of an action. So really for two reasons to put this on the agenda. One is to clarify that we're not the enforcing body for the open meeting law. I don't even think the town clerk is the enforcing body. There's a statute that has procedures, and if somebody has a concern or complaint about an open meeting law issue, they should follow that procedure. So, we take whatever communications we get for informational purposes, but it's not something that we act on under the open meeting law. And the second, I guess, was to see if the selectmen, if any of the selectmen wanted to either address this or had anything they wanted to do by way of any kind of formal action on this issue. And if you guys have anything else that you think we need to talk about in this respect, let me know. It's really on here because it's been a matter of intense public interest for the past week or so.
It was put on at the request of one of the selectmen, so maybe we should start with an idea of what's being asked.
Okay.
Well, exactly that. The next 12 hours after that meeting, we were all flooded with emails. I assume you guys were. You were copied on
Yeah.
several that I was copied on, asking what are the leaders of the town doing? So, rather than not respond, we're responding. I asked to put it on the agenda because to then follow that up with another Board of Health meeting, I'm not sure what good that would do. So, here we are. Their meetings aren't recorded generally. This is. The public tends to come to these meetings more often than not. So, I think it was important to bring it here. Whether or not we can do anything about it, we can at least listen to the residents. I was at that meeting till 12:15. I had no idea what was going to happen. I was one of the 4 or 5 people that left, and I'll leave it at that. I can't speak for what happened, other than what we all know happened, but
So I guess the question is this, do we need to air this issue at a public meeting, at a Board of Selectmen's meeting, or is it something that should be taken up directly with the Board of Health? That's the way I look at it.
I don't know.
Okay.
I know it's an ongoing issue, and the public's asking us, as five
Well, they
leaders of the
are,
town,
but
to do something.
I understand that, and I agree, but one response to that is, I mean, sometimes there are procedures that don't involve going through the Board of Selectmen, and sometimes there are ways to address issues directly, and so I just, with all the things we're doing, I'm not sure this is a great use of our time.
I just, Mike, I'd like to make one comment, which is the tone of the debate on next door Sherman has been troubling, and people are very upset. But I'm concerned about the failure to follow process, and the town administrator, the governance task force, when we drafted and the town meeting adopted the bylaw for the town administrator, we made the town administrator the head of personnel for process, not in terms of making decisions. This board has been very differential to other elected boards in terms of, from the very beginning, when we got the Inspector General's report, we made it clear that this board didn't hire Mr. Oram and would not be directly involved with that. But I am concerned that every town board elected, every town employee work with David on the process. It was done for a reason. Personnel matters have exposure and potential liability. David is the town's director of personnel, and I am concerned about the process. I'm not sure that that was followed here, so I think that is within our jurisdiction to express concern about the town administrator's role being respected and his advice being sought and whenever possible followed.
And David, do you want to give us some background on that?
I just met with the chair of the Board of Health a half hour ago, and gave her a list of what the outstanding items are. Plus, the Inspector General's office contacted the Board of Health with a request for documented proof of some of the things we were looking for, which was a disclosure of other municipal commitments, a time tracking log form, and that's what we're working on.
Okay,
I have no doubt that she'll get those to me.
okay. So we're getting, that's on the right path?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Great. Darrell, do you want to be heard?
Yes, Darrell Beardsley, Chair of Board of Health, and we
Do
had
you
a
want
meeting.
to talk to the mic maybe? I think just because the TV's going.
Just want to note that the Board of Health hosted a meeting here this evening, so I'm going to open up the Board of Health meeting for this discussion. I'll start with the most recent one about a comment about consulting with the town administrator. And we have worked with him on the personnel issues. We did have the letter from Ashland, which was the major outstanding thing. We did have disclosure from the health agent about other work commitments, but we'll firm that up with the appropriate style of paperwork that we didn't have. However, the documentation that we've talked about with the town administrator was implemented. One, the Board of Health implemented a version of more elaborate documentation a couple of years ago, I believe, when things first started happening, and adjusted that and have made a few more adjustments, and in fact just last week made yet another version of something, and I think there's another edit coming. So it is a work in process, but we do have the documentation that the IG's office is looking for. So that's one thing in terms of process. We have been working and communicating with the town administrator. So I don't know if we want to talk about briefly touch on our meeting. We're preparing something, a reply to or information to be sent to the IG's office with town council. So that's underway. That was initiated immediately. So there are a couple of things that have been raised. The late hour. It's no surprise to anyone that the Board of Health has been having late meetings often for the last over a year. But we have a lot of work. It was not as if we were sitting there knitting for a few hours waiting until a late hour. We had things scheduled, appointments, a public hearing that went long. The person who had the next scheduled appointment after that allowed us to go longer because the discussion was rather detailed and intense, and so we continued to try to, I mean, I've always taken the position that I want the public to have as much chance to speak as they want, provided that we're not getting too repetitious, but there were a lot of good ideas that came out of that meeting, but that meant that that one topic went for 2.5 hours when we thought it might be an hour. And then there were other issues that followed on from that, and I do recall at one point that Peter Lifferton asked about the item, the agent item, and I said that we're taking the most, scheduled appointments first, but after that, we were taking all the most time-sensitive things first in case at some point we just could not handle going any longer, but there were permits to be signed and all that, or to be approved. So that's basically that. And then on the open meeting, it was noted on our agenda, and we've gone back and forth with people's issues with how things are written on the agenda, and we know that this topic is important, and we've heard hours of comments from the public on the health agent topic. But what we've also seen is that whenever there is an item related to that on our agenda, that the discussions tend to grow into all sorts of areas. So what was on our agenda that night was health agent position. It was very broad. And that was to be able to...
Hey.
It was intentionally broad so that it would allow for wherever the discussion might go. It had then a note on it saying something about, and I can't remember the exact wording, but
Job posting update.
thank you, job status and update, something like that. I think it had both words.
Housing update.
Now, this was under chair's business. That note was added on as a detail to remind me to make sure that the vice chair, who has taken, who is spearheading the search for health agent to fill the position, you know, we have that position advertised at the moment, he's spearheading it. I want to make sure, since it wasn't something I was responsible for, that we also covered that as part of whatever health agent position discussion we had. So that's that.
All right.
I don't know if you have any comments?
Well, up here first, sure.
Darrell, thanks for coming. And Chris, thanks for coming. I've served on a lot of boards and committees. And it seems to me that after 10 or 11 o'clock at night, there's inherently a fatigue sets in, and not much good gets done after those hours. I understand that you have a lot of work to do, and I commend you for all the work that you do. And this isn't meant to be critical at all, but it is. I would ask you, and not just you, every board or commission in the town, not to run meetings so late at night or even indeed into the morning. And again, the reason for that is the necessity for business to be done has to be done competently when people have the energy to pay attention and to follow the details. And secondly, because we are a government of the people and by the people and for the people, having meetings go that late doesn't allow for public participation to the extent that it really should be there. So I wonder if the board would entertain a motion by which the board would request all boards and committees in town to wrap up their business by 11 o'clock or something like that. so that we don't have meetings going for so long and so much burden on the public and on the participants and indeed on the board itself. If you need more meetings, the answer is to have more meetings.
And we have
Not
had
to-
up to 5 meetings a month in the last year
Right.
as well. So we're trying, and I appreciate, and we're not thrilled with them going late either. I will note, though, that some important work gets done. What Sean had stayed to participate in the discussion for, I think, was an important discussion that, and needed to be addressed before the following meeting. So
But many citizens
I
have
agree, but
kids that
it's
have to go
not
to
ideal.
school, and they have work they have to get to in the morning. It just doesn't strike me as being the best way to operate. So, number one, I'm urging, but not just you, this isn't focused just on you, it's focused on us and every board and committee in town. We just shouldn't run that late. I just don't see much good coming out of long, involved meetings.
And I agree, I don't know, I guess what I'd like to discuss, because we don't want to be there late. None of us is happy about having such long meetings, but there were issues that could not wait until the following meeting, and the other things took a long time. Again, we do take a lot of public comment. I suppose we can cut back on that, but that doesn't seem to be what people want either. So we're really trying to figure it out. So how, and we had talked earlier in the evening about fitting in an extra meeting between that meeting and the next meeting, and it didn't look like it was going to be able to work out. So what do we do when there are issues that have to be dealt with? So that's why we stay. We don't stay because we love staying late. We both get up very early to go to work in the morning. So it's a hardship on us as well, but we're faced with that, meeting those needs.
I mean, I guess
So-
I would say one thing to do, and again, without being critical, but you asked the question, would be if the things that have to get done are the last things on your agenda, they probably should be the first things on your agenda, because then you can drop off things that don't have to be done.
Except we had scheduled appointments and a public hearing and variance hearings, so, and we put those first because we figured people wanted to come and comment at that, so we wanted to have that earlier. So we're in a somewhat of a no-win situation, but if you have good ideas about how to get around that, we'd love to hear them, but it's been difficult and we're wrestling with it, and we're really just trying to do the best we can and spending a lot of time on it, and we are trying. We are really trying.
So we do have a motion on the table, I think, by Paul.
Yeah, I'd like to move that we urge all boards and committees in the town of all character and jurisdiction to wrap up their business by 11 o'clock.
I would second that with a friendly amendment that we need to have the caveat whenever possible. There are clearly emergency situations where it's just not going to be possible. And I don't know if you consider a friendly amendment in terms of agenda posting. I think this board, every board in town needs, particularly for items that there is a lot of interest in, the agenda needs to be clear, and with all due respect, I don't think a job posting update is the same as filling a post, hiring somebody. So this board, every board needs to be clear. We try very hard to stick to our timing on the agenda because it's important. I looked at the agenda.
I'm sorry, your time's up.
Yes. It's 6:30 or 6:30.
I looked for, at the agenda, and it was very, very detailed about a lot of items. A job posting update is not very detailed. So I don't know if, I guess it's not really germane to your
What I'd like-
motion.
I actually had a bunch of motions that I was thinking about, and I wonder if we could do that as a separate motion.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
So I think this first piece, I know for myself, I get to be after 11, 12 o'clock, I'm just not as good as I was 3-4 hours earlier. That's really what that motion is about.
So why don't we take this item up, this motion up, and it's been seconded, and then if there are other motions or other discussions of this nature, maybe we can have a session on a later agenda.
Yeah.
So
Can you clarify the amendment now?
The amendment just would be to add the carve-out whenever possible. There are clearly going to be emergency situations where we may be going to 1 in the morning because we have to, because we've got a deadline that we have to meet, and other boards have the same. I don't think it can be that prescriptive, so.
Okay.
Well, again, this is a request. And
Yep.
what it really does is try to draw attention by the different boards to an issue. And it's, at the end of the day, we can't tell one committee or any other committee to stop. But what we can do is to make it clear that our collective experience and our collective judgment is that it's not a good use of your time and of the public, and of applicants, having some applicant wait around till 1 o'clock in the morning to be heard. It just doesn't sound like the kind of way to run our government in the most welcoming way. That's really what all this is about.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the table, and I've seen two hands, and I'm going to give and Susan, you spoke on this topic the other night, so respectfully, I'm going to pass over, but Richard and Robert, if we could. Yes, please.
A couple of things. One is, I think you started out by saying that the selectmen were not any kind of a ruling board about a potential open meeting law violation. I'm glad you made that clear. And therefore, the question is, well, what's this discussion for? I understand it's been brought in front of you by a group of citizens, and it might be that the best thing to do is to talk about it. It might be the best thing to do is say, this is properly the business of the Attorney General, and here's their website. That's the first point. The second point is that the alleged violation of the open meeting by the Board of Health concerned a statement about an agenda item which was not specific enough for some people to understand what might encompass. This board just put a motion on the table which has nothing to do with the item that you're currently discussing. Is that not exactly the same kind of thing that the Board of Health is being alleged to do? I don't have a hue and cry about it, but there it is.
Actually, can we comment to that?
Yeah, of course.
I think I'm 180 degrees from what you just said. Part of the open meeting law complaint is the fact that there was an agenda item that A, was vague, and B, was on the agenda at 9:30 at night. Or it didn't exist, one or the other. It happened at 1:20. So part of the complaint is an agenda that has something at 9:30. Potentially, one would have thought the meeting would end at 10, went till 1:30. So this, I think this
just like to-
motion addresses that slightly, because if you're the chair and you're drafting an agenda, you're not putting things on the agenda at 12:30 at night, and nor is the public reasonably thinking, I need to stay out till 12:30 at night, because there's an agenda item there. If you have an agenda item at 9:30 and it rolls till 12, you'll be thinking about what Paul said, and you'll be going, we should probably wrap this up.
So again, we've got a very tight night tonight, and I did say that Robert could speak if there's something germane to Paul's motion, which I think Richard's comments were, and then I'm going to make a suggestion. Robert?
I can see several cases where that would be a problem. For example, let's say that the board has in an expert, or an applicant has in an expert who may not be available. You hire someone to come in, you're paying him for 4 hours or something, and then he doesn't get to speak and has to come back another night. that could be a real burden. The other thing is that you can put on your agenda that you have so-and-so at this time, so-and-so at that time, so-and-so at the next. You don't take those items before they occur, but frequently those are stated, and it's assumed, at least by board members, that one or more of them is going to be longer than the 10 minutes allocated for it. And therefore, you don't know where they are. And when you want to have open discussion with, then items do drag on longer. And to have people come in for an item and then say, oh, well, sorry, the time's run out, you'll have to come back another night.
No, I get the point. That's a very good point.
Yeah.
So
It could be really difficult for committees that have things scheduled.
So this is why we
They know
can't.
will go longer, but they don't know which one will go longer, and if any of them, or two or three of them.
I don't mean to cut you off, but we're kind of creating our own example here because we have and it's not you, it's been the whole discussion, which is a good discussion and needs to happen. I'm going to make a suggestion, which is that I'm going to request whether Paul would withdraw his motion and whether we can schedule at a later meeting of the selectmen sometime in the next month or two, that we have an agenda item that gets at policies that we would recommend for Sherborn boards to follow. In suggesting that also, I'm going to point something out, which is I've probably been to, I don't know, 1,000 board meetings in other cities and towns in Massachusetts. It is all over, maybe more than that, it is all over the map in terms of how board chairs and boards handle their agenda, what time they end, whether they limit the number of applications on a particular agenda, whether they schedule extra sessions or not. It is literally all over the map. I don't think there's a right or wrong way to do this necessarily, but we should try to come up with what the best way is for Sherborn.
We have that scheduled on September 29th meeting, the open meeting law plus the municipal modernization.
Okay, this still could be part of that discussion. Maybe, Paul, are you willing to withdraw this, since otherwise I think this is going to get into a morass of discussions?
Okay, but can I just respond?
Well, again, we do have an applicant who's here, and at 7 o'clock we have a hard stop, so I really wanted to give the person who's here a chance to speak for their discussion. There may also be people here to look at that item that was supposed to start at 6:30.
Okay.
So can we go on to the next item, which is proposed 40B multi, and thank you, Darrell and
Yes, and I
Chris.
just,
No, Darrell, thanks.
I need
Proposed
to
40
close the Board of Health meeting.
Okay, but do that, and then let us get Pat
Okay,
Teddy
I'm
up here.
closing the Board of Health
Great,
meeting.
thank you. Proposed 40B project multi-unit development on Sewell Road Lane, 82 rental units, PGN Corporation. Do we have somebody presenting that?
Yes, Mr. Teddy is here.
Okay.
Oh, you did, okay.
Okay, we've unfortunately got a pretty tight schedule here, so we're interested to see in what you have to show us here. Thank you. Sorry, Paul, I just...
Thank you. I think this will be as short as I can. My name is Peter Conant. I'm an architect and developer out of Boston. Got my degree at MIT some years ago and loved it where I am. I specialize in doing 40B projects, Section 8, local initiatives, mass housing, Department of Housing and Community Development, both single-family and multifamily rental. And I've known the owner of this land, Pat Teddy, for over 10 years. He did the septic system for a small development we did here in Sherborn at the corner of Farm and Lake, Farm Road and Lake Street. And he asked me to look at some land that he has on Sewell Brook. This is maybe a little hard to read, but this is Route 27. Sherborn Center is up here. This, which is very hard to read, this line here is the railroad track. And Sewell Brook Lane is a private way leading here, and Pat owns land all the way back to about this point where there's a clearing. You can see that a little better. I'm sorry, I'm here with Matt Beatty, the landowner. Should have introduced him first, and my partner, Ona Yoakika, from Lithuania. So I just looked at this very generally, and we are here not so much to make a presentation, but just to show you what we're thinking about. And if you'd like to work with us, that would be great. If you don't, that's great too. We just want to know where we stand. This is a development of 81 units, the majority of which are studios and one bedrooms. We're doing this to keep the potential for school children at a minimum. There are 8 two-bedrooms in this. And Silverbrook Lane is a private way, and we're extending a road up here. There's a connection so that we have a loop. This is 550 feet here so that we're not exceeding the cul-de-sac length. A couple things I want to mention. The reason the units are small is not only because of trying to attract young professionals without children, but we'd like to keep the prices down. Even the market homes are going to rent for somewhere around $1,000, $1,100 a month. The two bedrooms probably in the $1,300 to $1,400 a month range, and I don't know about the twos, maybe $1,600, $1,800, something like that. The other thing I want to point out is that I didn't know until I started looking at this that this land abuts the town forest at the end of Great Rock Road. And from here, as you know, you can walk out and there you have Rock and Narrows on the other side of Forest Street, and then that has connection to Broadmoor, Audubon, and South Natick. So it's just a wonderful area. And it's back here all by itself. The development that we're proposing is around the central green, which is about 300 feet by 100 feet. We're more than 400 feet from any immediate abutters. And this hill slopes to a point where we're 50 feet below these people. These are all two-story buildings, so I think lines of sight are going to be impossible for this to be seen. Speaking of lines of sight, Silverbrook, if you drive over the railroad track, you'll see it comes back at a sharp angle, which is totally unsafe, so we're looking to redesign that intersection. My work is really to talk with you, talk with all the other boards in town, see if there's a fit, go to planning, or conservation, or to health, fire, police, DPW, and so forth. Make an application to the state and so forth. And as you may know, all 81 units, even though there are only 20% or 16 that are so-called affordable, all 81 units will count. My understanding is that the subsidized housing index requires Sherborn to have 148. You have 34 now, you're 114 short. So we're 70% of getting you to that 114 units, where you will be so-called immune from people like me come to do this. But we like the area because it's really away from itself. Whenever I look at the aerial,
This is starting to feel like a vaccination.
it's difficult to find out where we are. This blue building here, which is an indoor riding ring. And we're over here, townland in this area, a railroad track, and the whole town forest being over here. So we think it's a good site for what we do, but obviously you're the ones that are in control and driving the bus and giving us some word as to whether it's a good idea. And lastly, I would say that I always get asked when I bring these things to a meeting, why haven't we heard about this before? This is the first time we've presented this anyway, so everyone in this room is seeing this for the very first time. These were produced about an hour and a half ago. And I'd be happy to take questions, and I've got a card if you want to contact me further.
Yeah, please.
I recall, some years ago, I was on the planning board in this town, and I think I saw this project maybe like in 1993. And I think at that time, the owner of the property was not the current owner, but someone else. They represented and promised that they were going to put deed restrictions on this property so that exactly this could not happen. Are there deed restrictions? My impression from those days. So I remember approving the plan in part in reliance on the fact that there were these deed restrictions. Aren't there deed restrictions in place?
The restriction, I believe, if I remember correctly, Paul, was that it would not be subdivided. any further. It was 1 acre zoning. The original plan that came into the town way, way, way back was for more lots. After a couple of years of back and forth, it was 3 lots that were cut. Had to show that with a 4,900-foot fill from the street, we could get another driveway for a 3rd lot. So the town approved approximately a 7-acre lot, a 9.71 acre lot, and an 8-acre lot. And the road coming in has the frontage for the back lot and the front lot on the cul-de-sac and the right-hand side of the gravel road. We're allowed to pave 320 feet. We gave that to the town for safety purposes. Built a fire pond, 44,000-gallon fire pond with a dry hydrant system because there was nothing in the area. So the restriction was that it would not be subdivided again.
Do you have a copy of that?
No, I don't. Not with me. I'll get you one. I'll get it.
Thank you.
Well, you guys, yeah.
Any other comments up here?
I mean, you know,
Just a question.
Mark?
Can you talk a little bit about water and septic?
Sure. The testing that's been done in this area and a few over here indicate that we have more than a 5-foot offset to groundwater. That's important because in Sherborn, the local regulation is more restrictive than the 4-foot offset under Title V. So 5-foot offset or 60 inches is what Sherborn likes to see. In fact, we have gone almost double that down to 12 feet, and I have not seen any water here. The perks are all 3-minute perks. So the area for these units that is required for septic is not a lot. It's about 100 feet by 300 feet. And that's something that we would locate up in this area where the testing has been done. In terms of water, the fire pond down here is, according to Pat, never emptied. They were pumping it to see how long it would take to deplete the pond. Never did deplete. So we have wetlands here in the town land, wetlands down here, and we're confident that we'll build one set of buildings, which takes 12 units, and we'll have 1 well per building. Some of the wells will be here, some of the wells may be down here.
You know, we're thinking more wells is better than the central. You know, you've got 80 some odd units, you're going to need a lot of water, which would probably mean storage tanks, which is pumps, which is problems, and, you know, so there is a well on the property now, about 200 and some odd feet from the back, stone wall, and it was approved, and I don't remember the gallonage, but it was good water. It was, the volume was good. So we're kind of thinking 1 well per building.
I had a quick question. What's, just maybe too early, but what's the approximate square footage for the studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms?
I've worked out the studios at about 500, 525 feet. The 1 bedrooms are 650, 675 feet. The 2 bedrooms are, and there are only 8 of those of the 81, they're about 800, maybe a little more than 800 feet. One of the designs of the building is that they're separated by these stairwells, and so you have 2 means of egress from the 2nd floor. You have 2 doors coming out to 2 separate stairwells, which also helps you divide the units in terms of sound. There was something else I wanted to say, the road here allows for 140 parking spaces. 2 to 1, of course, would be 160, 162. If we needed to, we could add another 20 feet of paving here, and then we'd be driving through a double row of parking. We prefer not to do that for obvious reasons. 1.7, especially when you have a majority of 1s and 2s, I think would do it. But we can bring it up to 2 parking spaces per unit easily. We'd just rather not build it down, but perhaps that would get the reserve, what people have. I suspect that with 37 efficiency feet, we wouldn't find many people with 2 cars, but we can accommodate.
Good, more questions?
For clarification, these would be rental units.
Yes.
Do you anticipate being a public water supply? Do you anticipate being a public water supply?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, as Pat said, we don't think we're going to have a central well feeding 80 units. We're going to have 8, well, we have 7 buildings, so they have 7 wells. But we would have to be licensed under the EP regulations for that, and there are setbacks from roads and from septic systems and tanks and things like that. We will have a centralized leaching area, which will either be up here or it could possibly be down here, which is down slope. But yes, we will be the provider of the water, and I think we have to make semi-annual reports to the EP with the testing and the quality and the flow.
Thank you.
Isn't there a requirement dating from 2014 that 10% of rental units be minimum 3-bedroom to accommodate families with children?
Well, there is a state understanding, memorandum of understanding, that says in any large project there should be 10% of the units that should be 3 bedrooms. We can easily make 3 bedrooms here. We'll take some of the other units away. The 3-bedroom, I don't think there's a market for that here, but we have lots of play space and so forth, and we would like to request from DHCD that we are allowed to use 2s instead of 3s. But you're absolutely right. There is a memo that is out there that would recommend or urge developers to create 3s. My feeling is that you're the town of Sherborn, and I'd like to know what you think, rather than just saying, oh, this is the regulation, we have no control. I'd like to do what makes sense for Sherborn.
Hi, I'm the guy that owns the lot in front, and I guess my number one concern for, other than the development we're talking about, has to do with deed restrictions, which were brought up. When we bought the property, it says, like, the applicant shall submit to the planning board a copy of the restrictions that will be put in the deed to lots 1A, which is us, and 1B, said restriction prohibiting any further subdivision of development of lots 1A and 1B other for one single-family residence with accessory buildings on each lot. So I'm just trying to find out, is there a legal, is this even like a legal possibility, based on deed restrictions to change what's been in here when we purchased the property, what we understood, to then talk about a project like this? I mean, I know there's 40B and other things, but can somebody just maybe give me some guidance on that? Because it's obviously a concern to us, and we just want to kind of get, that's at the heart of the issue for us right now.
Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't be able to give you guidance on that, but certainly an interesting issue.
Because it just seems like if there is a deed restriction and it's not followed, then anybody could remove the deed restriction if the parcel, is big enough for. I mean, it's a legal precedent. It's not against all the other things.
If I could, 40B can't trump a deed restriction. Deed restriction stands independently of 40B. The question that was raised, though, is that the deed restriction may not preclude this particular project, and for that, legal counsel needs to look at it and make that determination. But 40B does not override property rights.
I had a question of what your other alternative developments are for this property. What would you do with this if you weren't doing an 81-unit development? I know you've held the property for a while.
Yeah. Well, aside from, I think that it's approved for riding rinks, horse barn, 10-bedroom design on the house and barn apartment. It was a large proposal that I had approved back, I don't remember the exact year. So aside from that, what else can you do with it? Build on it. I suppose I could make it forestry and get a 30% reduction.
Well, I was just wondering if you had an alternative of a single-family house, like exactly.
Well, no, because you'd be going back to the question of deed restrictions. and subdividing it. It's 1 acre zoning, but it's approved for one lot. It's not, when I first went in, I wanted more lots. That's all I could get. And what else can you do with it? It's a single-family zone. This is a much better alternative, and I think it's a pretty good alternative for the town. In my experience, I'm primarily an apartment guy. Studios, one-bedrooms, if you had 1,000 of them, you would have a line waiting for them. They're affordable. People don't need as much space. They don't want it anymore. What we're looking is giving preference to town employees, town residents, putting in handicap units, a lot of things that I've run across in the rental business that is not out there. And it would accommodate a lot of people, from the recent grads to people retiring. You could live in one of these units on Social Security. It's, I think it'd be a great benefit to the town. And it's a tremendous use for the land. And it sits way back. Now, I know Sean's saying it's literally in his backyard. He's not joking. But as you're aware, once you're deficient, you've got to try to do something to correct it. And I think this is a very good alternative.
Richard?
Not to comment on the advantages of this project, it's an intriguing project. It floors me, I guess, that this doesn't count as a subdivision, and it's not clear to me at all, based on this, why this kind of development is available to virtually anybody, and what makes this possible that wouldn't be possible on virtually any other 3 acre perkable lot in town. I just don't get it, and I appreciate some.
Stick around at 7 for the 3B. This couldn't happen without Chapter 40B.
Reading forest,
Without Chapter 40B zoning exemptions and so forth. This could not happen in Sherborn without those exemptions. So now we have something like 7 40B projects in the town at this point.
40B makes it possible, and we're going to be talking about it in 3 minutes. So.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, I didn't hear those words at the beginning of the discussion.
That's what makes me. And I'm sorry to cut you guys off, but we've got a hard stop at 7, and thank you for coming in. I've got one more item here, which is we need just a quick motion and vote on this.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor? This is the payroll warrant. Thank you.
Payroll. We should pay them.
All right. All right, I'm not going to adjourn the board, but we're going to go sit in the audience because I think this is the planning board show, isn't it? John? You're hosting this?
Well, we're starting with the
I thought we were. This is our.
I don't think so.
We hired the consultant.
It says Sherborn Planning Board discussion, it says.
That's a separate agenda item.
All right, well, if we're staying here, then we're staying here. I didn't think we were. Yeah, we're not, okay. You guys want to sign that? Yeah, you can stop. Well, we're not adjourned, but we're stopping, and then the other meetings start.